Beat be? Is that Latin or what? Okay, you with me on that? Let's practice. Maybe some little maracas, I don't know. In church lately, we've been reading the Gospel of John. In the Gospel of John, the writer introduces us to Jesus in a very unique way. There's 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're called the synoptics. They see a lot of things alike. John does his own thing. And as we've been reading in the season of Advent, which is a season of preparation before Christmas, we have seen that John introduces Jesus in several different ways. In one way, John says Jesus is Word. A very mysterious word. He is Word. And this Word existed before creation, and all creation came about through this Word. It's kind of a cosmic idea. Then John says that Jesus is also light. Jesus is a light that is unextinguishable. So Jesus is Word, Jesus is light. And then last Sunday, we explored how Jesus was a stranger. Jesus was in the world, and the entire world was created through the Word, and yet the world did not recognize Jesus. Jesus was a stranger. So where does John go tonight? What's kind of the culminating thing that John says about Jesus tonight? In verse 14, John says, "And the Word, the Word became flesh and made a home among us." Made a home among us. So Jesus was a Word. Jesus was light. Jesus was a stranger. And I thought, well, what do we call this next story about Jesus, or this next image that John shares about Jesus in the opening verses? I think it says that Jesus is a homemaker. Jesus made a home, according to one translation. Jesus made a home. Jesus is a homemaker. That's a little unexpected. When you think about how John said Jesus was the Word and Jesus was light, these cosmic, nebulous ideas. And then you go from that to Jesus is a homemaker? Seems a little dissonant. And then when John says Jesus was a stranger, he goes from being a stranger to being a homemaker. He made a home after being seen as a stranger. That seems a little off too. Tonight, let's explore a little bit about how Jesus goes from being a stranger to being a homemaker. So, when Jesus was a stranger, the world did not recognize him. The world was hostile to him. I was thinking, when we are in hostile situations, psychologists show that normal human beings have several reactions. We can fight, we can flight, run away, or we could freeze, is a new idea. It used to be fight or flight. Now we know that our bodies might cause us to freeze. These are normal human functions. They are to protect us in danger, hostility, or terrible situations. Fight, flight, or freeze. Thank you, central nervous system, for protecting us. Further study has shown there are other possible reactions to hostility. You could tend and befriend. So just something to throw out there. If we're in a hostile situation, and sometimes we just don't have any control over it, and, Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers for people who are in dangerous situations, and their bodies are telling them to fight, flight, freeze. But maybe thinking about tending and befriending might tap a different part of our brain and give us a little broader repertoire of how we can function in the world. I was trying to think of another example of where there was hostility and danger, and the response was homemaking, which I'll call tending and befriending. I thought about this for a while, and the example that came to my mind was Dunkirk. And I've shared that story maybe years ago with all of you. Dunkirk is a coastal city in France. And in May and June of 1940, it was the site of a very terrible battle of World War II. The Allies, which would be Great Britain, France, I think there were people from the Netherlands and Poland, they were all allied together against Nazi Germany. And there was a big battle for France. And on the Western Front of the battle, the Allies, and there were hundreds and thousands of soldiers, Allied soldiers there in France. The Germans had them cornered up in a western coastal city of Dunkirk there. They were trapped, and they were getting attacked by German airplanes from above. They were getting attacked at sides. Terrible bloodshed. It was a horrible, dangerous situation. Loss was at hand. Then for some reason, the Germans paused for a couple of days, and that gave the Allies time to think. What do we do? We can't fight, we're outnumbered. They thought about it's time to evacuate. But how do we evacuate from here? All the docks at Dunkirk had been destroyed, so none of the big ships could come in and evacuate the troops and get them back to Great Britain across the channel. Then somebody came up with an idea. What if, instead of the big ships that can't make it to the docks, we tap into little ships, little boats, and invite everybody along the coastline there by Dover in the United Kingdom, invite them to give up their little private boats, their fishing boats, their pleasure cruise boats, even some ferries. Can we convince enough small boat owners to come across and help us ferry our soldiers out of danger? So a remarkable, remarkable idea. I mean, just to come up with that idea and then to convince a whole bunch of people to buy into the idea. And it was a dangerous idea. With Germans overhead, they could be killed. And the waters weren't safe either. It was a big, risky ask. But people bought in. And all in all, over 800 small boats came across and ferried people from Dunkirk, France, over to the coast of England. Over 300,000 people were ferried across the channel. Over 300,000 people in little boats. They couldn't come to the docks, but they could get to the seawall. There was one seawall the little boats could get to, and the little boats could also get to the sand and pick people up. And the little boats also could pick up people and ferry them out to the larger ships so that many, many were evacuated. So it was a terrible situation. There was other loss of life and loss of equipment too, but it could have been so much worse. So in Great Britain, it became this Dunkirk miracle, this Dunkirk spirit that we don't know as much about here. We didn't enter the war till 1941. I was thinking that God might have had a similar experience. God might have been thinking, say, circa 0 AD, man, I see a problem. I see some hostility there on earth. What am I going to do? Well, did God think I could use my big ships of, say, empire? Maybe the Roman Empire will listen to me. Maybe I can use the Roman Empire to influence people. No, too violent, too oppressive. Maybe God thought, maybe I'll use the religious institutes there, the Pharisees, the Sadducees. No, they've kind of bought into empire. I feel like they're no longer listening to me. What am I going to do? God came up with a big plan. In the Gospel of John, God says, God so loved the world, or John said, God so loved the world that God sent God's only begotten Son. So according to the Gospel of John, God's big idea was, you know what? I'm going to send my Son who was with me before the dawn of time, this Word, this light, this cosmic companion of mine. I'm going to send that Son into the world. But I don't have any big ships to help me out. But I do have some little boats, like Mary and Joseph. People who know how to take care of things. People who know how to make a home. They'll help me out. And then how about the shepherds? They know how to take care of things. They're homemakers. I will use homemakers to realize this great dream of mine of my Son becoming a human being and walking the earth. That's how I'm going to get things done. And that's how God gets things done today, too. God has big ideas about love and justice and grace and mercy. And sometimes we think the big boats are going to take care of that. But the Bible shows us that little boats, faithful people who know about caretaking, they are the venues for God's homemaking on earth. You know, when I was looking into this Dunkirk story, I had to look up the movie version. And, okay, no lie. Later on, after I had the sermon developed, I looked at the movie poster, and you know what the movie poster trailer said? Get this. When 400,000 couldn't get home, home came to them. Home came to them. You know, in Jesus Christ, God sends us home. Jesus makes a home with us. God is our strength. God is our refuge. God is our harbor. You know, another irony, our church's theme for the year is harbor for travelers. The symbol for the Christian church is a boat. It's a big boat a lot of times. But the Christian church is made up of little boats. And we're part of God's fleet here. Don't think that something big's going to come and rescue us. God uses faithful, caretaking people to overcome hostility. Don't get overwhelmed by all the great needs of the world. Oh, there's so much. War, hunger, cruelty. We could just try to check out or ignore it. But God's Spirit is alive in us with our little caretaking skills. We know how to make a home with the one who makes a home among us. You know, I see lots of boats here tonight. We have quite a fleet. Let's get rowing. To God be the glory. Amen.